the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas Podcast with old friend Stay Hot, a sports podcast own. Theo Ash is back, the birder himself. Theo, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. It's a beautiful day. I was out at the lake earlier, just kind of tooling around, and back now to talk about some Tennessee draft prospects. I'm excited.
Yes, we have a lot of interesting Tennessee draft prospects this year in particular, because we have to start with James Pearce, because before the season, there were mocks that James Pearce could go number 1 overall. Like, that was in play based on his season 2 years ago with Tennessee, where he really burst on the scene as a Leo. I've talked extensively this offseason. I don't know where you have Tyler Barron out of Miami, who was at Tennessee 2 years ago when James Pearce really went off. One of the things I talked about here was that you could see the difference between having Tyler Barron on the opposite side in pass rush situations next to Pearce, where those two were just an unbelievable pair. And Tennessee tried to do the Moneyball thing and replace Tyler Barron in the aggregate with 3 different rotation guys who just didn't add up to what Tyler Barron was able to do. And Barron was good at Miami, too. I mean, he single-handedly was wrecking Florida in that early game. And he's just a really, really good strong side defensive end that just plays off Pearce well. So I think that's kind of one of the biggest reasons I think he might have slipped a little bit this year, is that he didn't have that same kind of help on the opposite side, the line of scrimmage, especially in pass rush spots. But when you look at James Pearce from this year and James Pearce 2 years ago, what did you see? Did anything change in his game and his style? Like, how do you explain this kind of free fall a little bit for him right now?
I think he was overhyped last year is what explains it. I'd watched him after the last draft and was getting a feel for the top prospects in next year's draft. And when I looked at Pearce, I was like, I can't believe that everybody's mocking him number 1 overall. First of all, does a 240-pound edge ever go first overall? No. And just watching his game against like J.C. Latham, for example, it was just clear he wasn't ready to deal with that kind of power and anchor. And I said, if the draft was today, I'd give him a second round grade. And now we're here. It's a year later. The draft is pretty much tomorrow. And he's probably going to go in the second round. So I just don't know what people were seeing with James Pearce, whether it was the sack numbers, just the general production. I mean, he's got some nice things to him, the length, and he's technically sound. He's smart. So it's not like he's bad, but man, he just never really fit the profile of a Myles Garrett or even a Trayvon Walker or a Jadeveon Clowney, Courtney Brown, Mario Williams, all these guys who go number 1 overall in the draft. So for me, I think people were looking for the next guy, and they thought he was Abdul Carter, looking at the numbers and just kind of looking at his weight, but he just wasn't. I think I don't think he has that kind of bend. He's got some serious stiffness, I think, which is weird for someone so small, and I think that causes him some problems because he's not like this ferocious power rusher either. He just kind of gets buckets, getting into guys' frames with his long arms. He gets a lot of contained sacks, I think. He's really natural, kind of peeling off into coverage and guarding guys, which I think is really interesting. He had the strip sack on the goal line against Florida last year. That was a really cerebral play. So I think he's smart. He's disciplined. He can read the mesh point on play action and get production that way, because it's really hard to fool him. Gets his hands up and bats passes. So he finds ways to kind of stuff the stat sheet and impact the game without really first round tools to me.
When you look at the end of the first round, because I mean, I've seen the Eagles thrown out, and that feels like that would be, I personally would love to see something like that, him go to the Eagles and just build off that SEC defensive line with all the Georgia players and everything else, where it just feels like he wouldn't be it's a situation where it's a good team where he would not be expected to go in and just be a 3-down guy and put up big sack numbers out of the gate. Like, there was some Falcon stuff, and I just can't. I love James Pearce, but I don't want to be frustrated with Pearce living up to the hype. If the Falcons were to like take a reach on him just because they need someone to get 7 or more sacks, which they have not been able to do in like 5 years, which is crazy. The longest drought in NFL history of not having a pass rusher get 7 or more sacks in a season, which is just crazy town. But I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, where is the best fit in the back end of the first round or the early part of the second? When you look at the teams who will be in that range, is it the Eagles or is it maybe the Ravens potentially? Like, is there a best spot you think for James Pearce that gives him the best chance of long-term success in the NFL?
Probably the Eagles, just because they're the best
Yeah.
franchise and the Super Bowl winner, and I think they've got pass rush up the interior with Jalen Carter and Ojamo, and now is going to be stepping into the role that Milton Williams left. And with that interior pass rush, it might be easier for Pierce to kind of play the roles that he's comfortable. He can stunt and loop inside. You've got Nolan Smith on the other side, really coming into his own as well. So he'd be entering a really good unit, I think, that could use his skills pretty well. Although with Fangio, it is always a kind of a 4-man rush with him. And it's the linebackers and safeties just consistently going into coverage. And one of the really interesting things about Pierce is how you could potentially deploy him as like a sim pressure piece, drop both rushing or dropping kind of with equal adeptness. So from that perspective, Baltimore would be a good fit, I think. The Falcons maybe in the second round would be a good fit. I agree that it's too high for number one, for a number one pick, but Raheem Morris could maybe do some interesting things, building a pass rush kind of around him or leveraging him and then dropping him and wasting a slide or something like that.
Because he's kind of like Leonard Floyd, right? Like that's who they just signed this offseason. There's I feel like there's some comps there to what Leonard Floyd's been like in the NFL level for him.
Yeah. I don't know who to comp James Pearce to, because it just feels like he's a 240 pounder without this like motorcycle bend, which is what I feel like Floyd has, as kind of a prototypical undersized rusher. Like Pearce is undersized, but I just don't know like if he's got the undersized benefits necessarily. So I have absolutely no idea who to comp him to. I have absolutely no idea. He's one of the weirdest prospects that I've ever seen.
Interesting.
Yeah, I could not quite get a bead on exactly what he's going to look like and how he's going to win, but he still found ways to impact the game in a lot of different ways. I think definitely a team that likes to be multiple and blitz. I wouldn't want him in like a San Francisco type scheme where it's just 4 people, wide nines going after it, maybe over and over and over again. I think he can do a little bit more than that. So yeah, Falcons, Raheem Morris, maybe a team like Arizona with Jonathan Gannon. He's got a really interesting scheme where he'll be rushing 3 more than anybody else, and he'll be bringing guys in from the second level and dropping other guys. Like there's no one quite doing it like him. So maybe that would be a good fit again, round 2, in my opinion, where you get kind of this weird skill set player with a coach doing stuff that no other NFL guy is doing right now. So maybe I'll say the Cardinals.
Well, and it's interesting too because like Pierce did not blitz at all Tennessee, I should say, did not blitz much. They were sending 4 throughout the year, and that was like kind of the problem against Georgia, where Carson Beck dropped back to pass 40 times and wasn't touched. So Tennessee thought they could get home with 4 because they were able to do it for the majority of the year, but in big games like Ohio State, Georgia, and a couple others, they couldn't get home with 4. So I do I do think it's interesting because like it was not a blitz heavy scheme that Pierce was feasting in. It's a like, hey, kind of conservative, like we'll let you get some yards, but once you get in the red zone, like you're not scoring. Like we're gonna make you kick field goals, and we're like Tennessee was top 10 in scoring defense last year, and they've always been a good TFL team, good in sacks as a team. But yeah, Pierce came from a kind of a traditional kind of lineup situation with Banks and kind of what Rodney Garner, one of the best defensive line coaches in college football for years. Like it's kind of standard. And one of his position coaches, the assistant defensive line coach, Robert Ayers, he was obviously a defensive lineman in the NFL for a while too. So a lot of NFL track record there. And I don't know. I like you said, he's kind of a unicorn in a lot of ways, but it does feel like where he gets drafted is going to be, it matters a lot more to guys like Pierce than other guys, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. A guy like Mike Green, for example, he's got the bend that you're looking for. He can hit some of the wickedest pass rushing moves I've ever seen. Like there, I think whoever gets him, it's going to be pretty straightforward. Like he's not going to be dropping. He's going to be blitzing or getting after the quarterback every play. And you don't have to scheme around a guy like that. He's hopefully going to collect sacks no matter what the scheme is. Pierce, I think is a little bit different, where you want him layering in as part of a pass rush plan and feigning going and then dropping and things like that.
On the running back front, Dylan Sampson had an unbelievable season, having to carry the load for Tennessee in the second half a lot. I think Mina Kimes is a big Dylan Sampson fan. Dylan Sampson is just one of those. It's really interesting to me in terms of how you analyze running backs in Heupel's scheme, because you get light boxes with just the wide splits receivers. So that's a benefit. Tennessee averages 5 yards a rush every single year. It doesn't matter who it is under Heupel, but this was the first bell cow back season. It's been a rotation before this, but due to injuries and just roster limitations, that Tennessee really put a lot on Dylan. One of the best things about Dylan Sampson, it's kind of like the intangible stuff where he's just a great leader. Like he's a locker room leader. He's just a good dude to have in the locker room, and just, I think is going to be a consummate pro wherever he goes. And I think that matters in a lot of areas. But I do kind of wonder, because this is kind of a divisive thing, I think, among Vol fans, but I look at Jalen Wright last year as more of the prototypical Heupel back, where he's averaging 7.5 yards per carry. Like that breakaway he had when he got to the second level against Georgia, where he has a level of speed that he went to Miami, and I'm like, oh, perfect. Like I still hold out hope that he figures how to carves out a role with the Dolphins, but it's like they're so speed based that it's like with Waddle and everybody else, like, oh, Jalen Wright makes so much sense for them. That's good. Samson's the opposite. Like I've seen some people, like Sampson doesn't really have that second gear. Samson's more of a every down back Najee Harris type to me. But I don't know. What do you see in Dylan Sampson coming into the draft this year, where you think you might? Oh, and then when you think back to how you looked at Jalen Wright last year, who do you like better coming into the NFL?
I think I like Sampson more, honestly. I just think Sampson has so many intangibles, like you said. Like I didn't know about him off the field, the kind of leader he is, but you can tell that he's like that based on how he plays. Like he knows his game, he plays his game, and he just always does the right thing. Like I think his vision is incredible. He trusts his speed, even though it's not crazy. He isn't going to be trying to put a move on the safety or chop his feet when he doesn't have to. It's like, look, I'm in the open field. There's somebody in front of me. I'm just going to hit the highest gear that I can and try to angle around them. And a lot of times that's what works. I remember watching an interview with Dalvin Cook, and he said that was the main thing he had to learn going into the league, was just trust your speed. You don't have to run somebody over or juke them out or ever pat your feet. Just put your foot in the ground and go. And I think Sampson really understands that to a high level. I think the game is really moving slow for him. He feels contact kind of hit him, and he kind of uses that and flows off of that in a unique way, I think, to help him break tackles, even though he's not the biggest, strongest, fastest running back. He can block. He can and he can hit a home run or two. Like he can kind of bend himself and kind of contort his body and gain speed kind of through a curve, which I kind of like, even though it's not at the open field, he can be tracked down. So the vision, the speed, just the nonchalantness that he has when he gets hit and the way he's able to kind of bounce off of it. I think there's a lot to like about Dylan Sampson. I don't think he's the highest ceiling back, despite what the numbers say, but he is, like you said, a pro, and I think his floor is extremely high.
Is he a 3-down back at the next level or no?
Probably not. I don't think that he's probably a 4th round guy for me. I just don't know if he's quite got the workhorse body and a tackle breaking ability overall to be someone that you're feeding in the NFL like he did in college. But man, as a change of pace guy, I think he'll make you really happy when your NFL bell cow is out, when Josh Jacobs is out, and he would be in. I think the vision and I like that he's small too, a little bit. Like I think people like that get lost kind of in all the blockers, and he kind of understands how he's small and can kind of set that up. So he's somebody that I think is going to be a valuable piece to a running back rotation. Not a 3-down bell cow.
He's got some work done to him too. That just, it doesn't seem like, I don't know what, outside of being patient, like actually on the field, like it's just nothing that really jumps out of like, What's going to make this guy just be like in the NFL for 9 to 10 years, where you just keep looking at the end of the year of stats and you're like, oh, another good year for Jalen Sampson. Like he's just one of those guys where it's like, oh, he averaged 5.2 yards per carry again. And there he goes. He had 700 yards and it didn't feel like it throughout the year, but you're like, oh, he's just chugging along, Dylan Sampson. But I do kind of wonder about his workload because, I mean, his workload was crazy this year. So he's coming in with a lot of carries coming off this year. So I hope he's not an every down guy. I hope he is in a rotation.
Yeah, I think he will be. He just doesn't have the size you'd expect for somebody with all of those carries. And I do think the wear and tear coming out of college is something that everybody kind of sank their teeth into and ran with recently. And I don't think it matters as much as some would say, like Genty getting all these carries. Like, it doesn't really bother me. If you got all those carries, you probably got them for a reason.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing, honestly. So I'm not too concerned about like wear and tear on his body or workload, but I just think talent wise, there's very few like workhorse 3-down backs in the league anymore, regardless. And I just don't think Sampson's going to be one of those elite few, but that doesn't mean he's not good.
Dante Thornton, do you think he has similar struggles to Jalen Hyatt once he gets to the NFL here? Or do you think he's a little bit different because he's more of an outside guy? Jalen was really good in the slot, obviously, at Tennessee, Blitnikoff winner. But Dante started in the slot 2 years ago, moved outside this year, led the SEC in yards per catch. He struggled to stay on the field and get a healthy number of snaps. But when he was on the field, he was a gigantic difference maker for Tennessee. Like, where are you at with Dante and the past Tennessee receivers here?
I'm sorry that I don't know much about. That there's more defensive guys I can talk about, but I didn't watch so much.
Well, I am curious where he ultimately ends up. I guess how we can spin this though, even if you didn't watch a lot of Dante, Jalen Hyatt, like to this point, are you surprised he hasn't broken out with the Giants, or like, do you remember kind of what you thought coming into the NFL and like what's gone on there?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised that he hasn't really worked out with the Giants based on his workload at Tennessee. It's just there's a lot of stuff in college that just doesn't translate, I think. There's a lot of you've got some speed and some of these college DBs, that's all you need. Like, they just can't keep up with you. And when you're not running a huge route tree and it's just kind of getting open vertical over and over and over again, that does feel a little bit fake to me as a translation to the league. Like, if you're going to be an X receiver, you got to be able to really sink your hips and run a dig, hinge, decelerate, and run a comeback with enough speed that you've got space between the defensive back closing on you, and you can pick up yards after the catch. You've got to understand like the blitzes at the line of scrimmage and how those like affect the coverage and pull guys in certain directions, and where you can kind of settle down in every single soft spot versus every single zone. And with him, there was just like, it did feel like he was a one-trick pony in this offense. And it didn't surprise me that when you've only got one trick, defenses take that away because they've got all the same size and speed that you do. And all of a sudden it's a little bit harder for you to make it work, because you've got to learn essentially a whole new role. It's almost a different sport. And on top of that, I didn't think he was that great, like attacking the football. Like, his hands weren't unbelievable or anything like that. So, yeah, with him, it didn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me.
Have you watched Omar Norman-Lott at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've watched a lot of him.
Does he feel like to you, does he have a path of being the best Tennessee player drafted?
100%.
Okay.
100%. I think he does. He impresses me more than Pearce does, I think, because he's got bend. Like, he's a D tackle, but man, the amount of times where you see him turn a really tight corner, literally dive, like arms out, looking crazy, looking like a wild animal, like diving to wrap guys up and snare them. He's got these kind of long, like elastic arms that are always kind of waving around like an inflatable guy outside a car dealership. And they've got so much power in them, and he just kind of whips them around and guys go flying. Like, the NC State game, I was watching him and I was trying to keep track of like who is beating who and like what the food chain is up front, really. And like, he's beating the left guard, he's beating the center, he's beating the right guard. Like, big time. Like every single time he's on the field, it's like a decisive win in his favor because these guys can't deal with the length of his arms. His explosive first step off the ball is like major into the backfield. Then he's like throwing you around and bending. Like, man, he is a ton of fun. So yeah, he's got this kind of naturally low square body, which I think makes him kind of hard to move around in the run game. Like there are plays where guys get under him and he is undersized, and there are plays where he gets thrown around, but man, there's a lot of plays where that natural lowness helps him, and he's got heavy hands and he's able to make a good play in the run game. So I think at least as like he was at Tennessee, he was totally rotational with their like hockey shift mentality at the defensive line. I would have liked him to be out there more. But yeah, as a rotational guy in the NFL level, I think he could come in and bring a ton of juice. I think he could be a analytics darling for years to come. He is right now. Like if you look at this defensive tackle class and who's getting pressure at the highest rate, it's Omar Norman-Lott. And I think I could see him being a similar kind of money ball pick at the NFL level, where it's like, look, this guy doesn't have the body you typically see for a dominant defensive tackle. Like maybe you can't keep him on the field all the time because of the run games, but for a few snaps every game, like he's going to bring a ton of juice and have a sky high pressure rate. Like I think he's built like that. He's really, really enticing to me.
Is that like Grady Jarrett for you? Just kind of where you just people overthought Grady Jarrett out of Clemson, and then he's just a 10+ year pro. We're like, oh yeah, he figured it out. Like he's just a good football player, and it's like maybe net. And I understand both sides, where it's like sometimes measurables are the measurables. Like with tackles, arm length, like it just is what it is. Like sure, there are some unicorns, and I think the Ravens center, what is his name, where he's kind of a unicorn. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, you can take a chance. Like he might work out, but that doesn't mean that's the standard. Like those are, there's a reason that those guys, generally speaking, don't work out. Doesn't mean that's always gonna be the case, but there will always be outliers. Omar Norman-Lott just feels like a lot of people are going to overthink him. Where like you said, you watch the tape and watch he was the most consistently impactful pass rusher for Tennessee this past year.
Yeah.
And like you said, they rotate a lot, so that helps things and also kind of clouds things. But he was so important for Tennessee on third downs and in passing situations that, all this attention was on Pearce, but Omar Norman-Lott was unblockable in a lot of big games. Like,
there's so many players on Tennessee's defensive line that are like pro draft prospects. Like 20 is a pro draft prospect, 21, 10, 27. Like all of these guys are going to be drafted most likely, or they're going to be at a training camp. Norman-Lott's at a completely different level than any of them. Like completely different with the explosiveness and the disruption.
Final one here for you, and this is not about the current Tennessee draft prospects. This is just something that I'm curious about now that it's been a couple years, and Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker both in the league. When you think about what they showcase at Tennessee, and at this point, in their respective careers, where Hendon's backing up Goff in Detroit, Joe now being traded to be QB2 in Dallas, where he might be thrown to action because Dak can't stay healthy, and that could be the Joe Milton show sooner rather than later in Dallas. Two great dudes for Tennessee, but I don't know. I think it's one of those, Tennessee could really use one of these guys to work out at the NFL level to give some juice to, hey, this translates, and just because we run this kind of scheme at Tennessee doesn't mean you're not going to be able to make it all work at the NFL level. But when you look at those two, who do you think has the better chance of getting some starts and finding their way to start? Or is it just the answer is neither, probably turn into long-term starters? Like, is there a Geno Smith, basically, is what I'm saying, between these two?
I think it's Milton probably who has a better chance, but I'm a real sucker for the athleticism. But man, he showed out in that one game against, what was it, the Bills? Like he kind of came in out of nowhere and was really hitting some tough throws, like on the move, out of structure. I just think in the NFL, the pockets are always so tight. There's just very few plays like the ones I think Hendon Hooker got at Tennessee, where you can just kind of stand there somewhat unbothered and like very robotically kind of get through your reads, like, and throw and be able to finish your throw and just have it look all clean. I think it's better to prioritize the guys who, even when the right guard is kind of getting bull rushed back into them, or even when they kind of got to jump up and rise up in a tight pocket and make a throw and structure that way. Like those are the guys I think can really be special. And I think Milton at least has the athleticism to do that. Hooker, I mean, we haven't seen him. So, that's one of the other things. But like with him, I just don't know if he has just the creative juice and the athleticism to make somebody else right. Like if the guard loses, can you kind of be your own pass protection by making somebody miss or shifting in the pocket? I just don't think of him as that guy. He can run. He's probably going to run more than people think in the NFL because at Tennessee there just wasn't a lot of plays where the protection would break down like that, but he was good when he did, and I thought he had vision when he did. So maybe that's a crutch that he kind of leans on a little bit more in the NFL and surprises me with how athletic he is. But I just think Milton has some of the tools that you need to warrant a high contract or a starting gig or something like that. If you're going to get paid a ton, it's because someone else isn't getting a contract. You're making up for somebody else's errors, and I think to do that you need some really high end athleticism that Milton has got, and then Hooker does not quite.
I always thought like best case scenario for Hooker was Kirk Cousins at the NFL level.
And he's in the scheme in Detroit where he could maybe do something like that.
Which is why it made sense when they drafted him. It's like Goff is not like, he's not the guy who's making everybody better. And he kind of ran a similar scheme at Cal. Like Goff was a Cal Sonny Dykes guy way back when. So it's like he was running that Texas wide split stuff at Cal. So it just, I don't know. It's still a TBD, but they're both just super easy to root for. But I do kind of wonder who gets a shot and who has more of a sticking power. But like you said, like Milton's physical tools, I think, are going to keep giving him shots, and it might work out. It's kind of like the Anthony Richardson thing. You keep taking shots and see, like, because those kind of things you just can't teach. Like those are the kind of things, like a lot of coaches are like, I can do something with this. Like I can fix this. But the things that Hooker is good at is like, well, all right. Like if we're in a pinch, I know he can do X, Y, and Z. He's like the Jacoby Brissett type, where it's like he's just gonna stay in the league for a long time because he's a great teammate, great leader. Will know the playbook. Will not throw picks. Like that's the other thing. Is like Hooker doesn't throw interceptions. Like Hooker, like we talked about the robotic thing. It's like Hooker just makes great decisions. Like that. Like part of it is like he's not going to throw into traffic that where something's not there. He knows his limitations, I think, as a passer, and he knows what he can hit, what he can't. I don't know. He was just cerebral. Like the thing I talked about Hendon is just he's so cerebral. But to your point, it's just I don't know if you can be cerebral like that in the NFL level. I mean, Drew Brees was, but it took like 15 years to become a cerebral guy with not the best arm talent. Where he's like, I can put the ball wherever I want. And I can live in the short game. But I feel like that's pretty hard to do to get to the point with the guys like Brees or even Cousins, the peak version of Cousins before the injuries and everything. Of like, I don't know. I hope that's possible, but we also just haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't. And even when you become like as a pure pocket passer, I think there's a lot of athleticism involved that gets a little underrated. Like the feel, the step up and slide, and to maneuver multiple points of pressure, right? Like Drew Brees was great at that. Tom Brady is insane. It was insane at that, right? And when I was watching Hooker, I was like, he's a pocket passer, right? He's getting through everything. He's cerebral. Like you said, he doesn't throw interceptions, but again, like how is he maneuvering around the pressure? Because even a pocket quarterback has to do things like that. So there's just a lot, I think, with Hooker that, and we haven't seen him. We've at least seen a game of Milton playing good. But with Hooker, it's like, man, there's a big jump between going from that Tennessee offense to the league. And maybe he can do it. Maybe he could do it. But I'm thinking like, I'd rather take the chance of the better athlete.
I mean, you forget, like, there was late first round buzz for him. Like, the Vikings were rumored, like, and then it ended up, what did he go, fourth after it was all said and done? I think he was fourth round, right? So, I don't know. Some teams liked him in the first round, and you never know with guys like Hendon in the middle rounds. But what about the good folks over there at Stay Hot and everywhere else this week, Theo? It's draft week. What can the good folks look out from you and the team over at Stay Hot this week?
Yeah, we will be doing a live stream of the first round as it's happening. If you want to watch along with us, we'll be reacting to everything as it's happening. And then we'll have even further details with the podcast right after, I'm sure. And then, of course, you can find me on TikTok, probably giving grades to every pick and all the typical draft stuff that everybody loves. So yeah, find me at Theo NFL on Twitter and TikTok. Find me on the Stay Hot podcast, breaking things down. Matt and Bladen, my co-hosts. Just look up Spawn Hour and Bladen. You'll probably find them. Yeah.
There you go. Go subscribe. It's one of my favorite pods each and every week to listen to. Stay Hot, a sports podcast. Theo, thank you so much for the time. I greatly appreciate it, and we'll have to check back in again soon.
Of course. Thanks for having me on.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.